Hello, listeners, and welcome to the fifth and final instalment of my coverage on the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this is the Cult Vault. Today I speak with Sadie and Sydney, two women in America who have left the JW movement. In this episode, we discuss at length the patriarchal problems with this archaic religion, as well as a short Q&A. Before we get started, I wanted to take a minute to thank my newest patron, Brian. Welcome on board. I am so thankful and excited to have you here, and I look forward to bringing you exclusive monthly content. I also wanted to give a massive thank you to Corey, who made a donation last month to the podcast and has also signed up to the exclusive content. It's you people that make this podcast possible, so I am so grateful. If you'd like to sign up to the Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/thecultvault. This month I've been covering the Anthill Kids. Now let's get on with the show. These interviews take place over the internet, so the quality isn't great, and because I'm often speaking with people overseas, the time zones are difficult to arrange. So in this episode there is some background noise as people have had to carry on with their daily lives during the interviews, and I really apologise for this. But for now, here is Sadie and Sydney. Hello, Sadie and Sydney, and thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I am excited to speak to two ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in the same interview, which is not something I've done so far. So, Sadie, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So my name is Sadie. I live in the Southeast US, and my mom became a Jehovah's Witness. Actually, she converted when I was 10. Yeah. So like my dad, sorry, it sounds super shaky because I'm sick, but my dad and her got a divorce way before that. So she was a single mom and became a Jehovah's Witness, which is par for the course, I guess.
Okay. And Sydney, what about yourself?
Yes, so I'm also in the Southeast US, like Sadie, not in the same state though. I am a third generation born in. My grandparents converted. They started studying in the late 50s and got baptized in the 60s.
Okay. And you're both talking to me from a place of being ex-members of the church, so we'll go into a little bit of perhaps why you're no longer with the Jehovah's Witnesses. But Sadie, you mentioned that your mum was single when she joined the Jehovah's Witnesses. Do you think that there was that big change in her life may have played a part in her joining the church?
Yeah, I think so. She was already exploring different religions and churches and stuff when her and my dad split. And she just kind of was like a lost single mom. And she actually started dating an ex-Jehovah's Witness, but he was only disfellowshipped at the time. So he was going to get reinstated eventually. So they started dating and she became interested in it. And she got baptized really fast. She came in contact with him, and less than a year later, she was baptized.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And how did your life change then? Were you affiliated with any other religion before this? Because 10 is quite an interesting age to be brought into a religion that takes up so much of your lifestyle and your time.
Yeah, that was really hard because my dad, he's I don't know. He considers himself a Christian. I don't know what kind though. We would always go to Baptist churches, but I don't know. But so whenever my mom became a Jehovah's Witness, he got really mad actually, because he only saw us every other weekend. So whenever we would go to his house, for holidays and stuff, we didn't want to celebrate it.
Right.
And it felt she was taking that away from him.
Yeah.
So that actually, and my dad, he would direct his anger towards me sometimes. He would yell at me personally. I was a 10-year-old and I'm I don't know, Dad, I just see these pictures and I'm getting told by people that I will die if I don't become a Jehovah's Witness, basically. Like, I don't get it. And like, they would tell me I was old enough to make my own decision. And they kind of, I felt guilted into it. My dad he didn't appreciate it. And it was just really, really hard for us for a long time. We always argued around the holidays. And I actually stopped visiting him when I was 13 years old.
Right. And is that because you at that point are not encouraged to celebrate the holidays and things?
Oh yeah, I was like encouraged like the second my mom became a Jehovah's, like,
right. 10 years old as well. That's a big change. And then obviously you're being told that if you don't join the church, then bad things are going to happen to you, and that's instilling you with that fear from a young age. And you can't rationalize or go and do your own research and spend a day in the library reading a book and things like that. So that's a lot of pressure to put on a 10-year-old. But Sydney, you were born into the church, so you never had this drastic change from, celebrating birthdays and Christmas one year and then the next year not. So did you attend, were you homeschooled or did you attend a public school?
I did attend public school. My parents were a little bit of an anomaly as witnesses. Like usually when, a witness couple has a child and they go to school, it's like very, very heavily encouraged to either homeschool them, or if you do send them to school, maybe only send them up through like elementary school. And then when you are old enough to go to like middle or high school, then keep them home, because that's when like, quote unquote worldly influences can really start to hit hard, so to speak. But thankfully, my parents didn't actually agree with that line of reasoning. They felt like the best place that we could get an education was in public school. So I did go, K through 12.
And did you ever have those experiences in school where people would sing happy birthday to somebody and maybe you would not join in?
Oh my gosh, all the time. I was, really, really good kid, very like teacher's pet-esque. And at the beginning of the school year, my mom would always tell the teacher on the first day of school that, we were Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't do holidays. I didn't do birthdays. I always had to have different activities. And usually it was totally fine. And it didn't really bother me. But I'll never forget this one time. I was in like third grade. My teacher just out of nowhere looked up and was like, "Sydney, you need to go outside the classroom right now." And that was really jarring for me because I never got in trouble and I was such a good kid. And I remember I went out of the classroom. She didn't even tell me where to go. So I'm just like kind of dawdling outside the door and I'm like crying. And then next thing I know, I hear the kids singing happy birthday. So looking back, there was a student's birthday and she just kind of forgot to plan another activity for me. And, she didn't want me to participate and then go tell my mom and her get in trouble. So, she just like sent me outside really quick. But it was such an ostracizing feeling.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. I mean, it must be difficult for a teacher to know what to do in that situation to be right. But as you just said, like there's a difference between you sitting in the room and not actively participating in singing happy birthday and then sending you out in front of everybody so that there's noticeably something different about your upbringing than perhaps to the rest of the children in the class, which might set you apart from your peer group.
Exactly.
I remember on like the first day of school, my mom would always lay out like they had like a tract or something. Sid, I can't remember what it's called.
It was a whole magazine back when we were growing up.
Okay. but yeah, it was like a whole, like, it was like a 20-something page like magazine that they wanted us to give to all of our teachers and like preach to them while at school. I'm like, that's really awkward. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, they would just end up at the bottom of my backpack. I would never give them out. But
Yeah. I imagine that there were some members of the church that would try to speak to their peer group about the church and you know why it's so great and why you would come and join and be saved, because when you're a member of it within, you know, you probably both experienced completely believing in the narrative of the church and then wanting to help your friends in school and save their souls and you know and make sure that they were guided in the right direction. So I imagine some kids do try and sit down and have those conversations with other children in their class, which again might ostracize them a bit further.
Oh, for sure. Like at our like big like assemblies and conventions, they would always have parts that were directed towards like younger school aged kids, and they would say like, oh, young ones, when you go to school, that's your own special territory. A territory is what they refer to as
preaching work,
like in the neighborhoods to do preaching work. And so they would say, you know, that's your own special territory. Nobody else can go in and do that for you. And they would just pile on like the guilt and responsibility all the time.
Like, you don't love God enough or whatever because you're not preaching at school where it's special for you.
And what about the Pledge of Allegiance? Were you discouraged to stand up and do that too?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we were not allowed.
Yeah, I would stand. I like felt so because my mom became a Jehovah's Witness in the middle of the school year.
Right. Okay. So you had this weird transition period of kind of finding your way.
I guess if I stand and not put my hand on my heart and say anything, I can just like leave my hands down and like just be quiet. That's what I would do for a long time.
Right. And did you both attend the same Kingdom Hall when you were growing up?
No, we're in different states.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you
met friends and stuff through the through like the congregations, basically.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And Sadie, what did your Kingdom Hall look like when you started attending at the age of 10?
I mean, it was definitely different than a church because, you know, it was just like a big lobby and like there's like a big auditorium. Well, when I say big, I don't even know how many people it sits. Probably like 150, I guess. I don't know. Each Kingdom Hall is a little different. But then I realized they had like back rooms and stuff. And the people are love bombing the crap out of me. Like there's this single mom with 2 kids. And like that was really overwhelming for a shy child like me. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like being in the auditorium with all the adults and like all the commenting. Stuff was weird to me. I kind of missed going to Sunday school where I would like, sit with friends and just like be quiet and like talk to them. But it was definitely really different.
And you mentioned a single mom with 2 kids, so you have a sibling.
I do.
And what age was your sibling when your mum joined the church?
He was, I mean, we're not that far apart, so he's like 9. He was 9.
Okay, so a little bit younger. So it's still a strange transition for your younger brother as well.
I think he had a harder time with it, to be honest.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that was? Maybe is it because there's so much responsibility put on the men of the church?
Yeah, probably. I know when he got a little older, he started to push away from it a little bit, but he's still a Jehovah's Witness, so I don't want to talk about him too terribly much.
Right. Yeah.
We still have actually a good relationship, which is also an anomaly. Sydney has her anomaly and I have mine. And mine is my brother still talks to me, even though he still considers himself a Jehovah's Witness.
And Sydney, when you were growing up in the church, do you remember what your Kingdom Hall looked like?
Yeah, it was pretty similar to what Sadie described. It's funny because the Kingdom Hall I grew up going to is right across the street from a church. I don't even know what denomination, but it was like the church was this like very big, grandiose building. It had this like, I don't even know, this like 10-story tall peak, and it was all stained glass. It was this really beautiful building. And then right across the street is this Kingdom Hall, which is just a brick building and, you know, 1 story, no windows. Kingdom Halls don't traditionally have windows. And yeah, you would walk in, there was a lobby, that's where the restrooms were off of. And then you would go into the main auditorium that would probably seat at max capacity, like, I don't know, 150, 200 people. Off to the side of that auditorium was what they would call the, oh my goodness, now I'm drawing a blank. Sadie, maybe you could help, the literature counter.
Oh yeah, the literature counter. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't usually in the lobby at mine.
Well, no, it wasn't in the lobby. It was in like, you walked through the lobby to the auditorium and then it was off the auditorium.
Oh, yours is different than mine then. Because mine was in the lobby, yeah. I mean, but they're all set up pretty similarly. Like you walk in, you know, you're in Kingdom Hall. And they're always with ugly colors and silk flowers everywhere.
And what about yourself, Sydney? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have one older sibling, and they are still very active Jehovah's Witness.
Right, okay. And how many members roughly did you have in your congregation around, you know, the 10-year-old mark to up until when you left?
I started out in a larger congregation, and then we actually switched to the congregation that in the territory that we lived in. They usually assign your congregation by your territory that you live in.
Okay.
And we actually switched to go back to, or to start at the one that we're supposed to be in. Actually, we only switched because my mom married that guy who she met the guy, the ex-Jehovah's Witness that got reinstated. She met him at like a freaking like rock concert or something. So they weren't too happy when she married him really fast after she was baptized, because he wasn't. Was he? No, you know what? He was never actually baptized. He got baptized after he met my mom. I don't remember. Holy moly. But anyway, so the elders didn't like the fact that mom married him while he wasn't baptized yet. And they got mad and they switched congregations, which is what a lot of people do. If they get into a tiff with an elder, they don't like something they say. Sometimes we'll just switch. I know I did that a couple times. But the congregation I went to after that, when I was 11, was way smaller than the first one I went to. They had a publisher count of probably 90, but the attendance was probably only around 40.
Right.
It was in a rural area, so.
And Sydney, was this similar numbers to you as well?
I'm trying to remember when I was like under the age of 10, the congregation I was in was big. And it actually got to be too big. I think there were more than 200 publishers. And so they actually created a new congregation. And then everybody, the territories were reassigned. So everybody was placed in different congregations based off their territory. So I would say after the split, then I ended up I stayed in the same congregation, but because of all of the changes, I think the publisher count went down to about, I don't know, 90 to 100.
Right. And how many elders did you have at this point?
Oh, honestly, I have no idea, but based on like just looking back older, like every congregation's body of elders is typically like pretty small. Like,
Yeah.
Is that the same for you, Sadie, as well, would you say?
Yeah, I know the congregation I switched to when I was 11, they had only like 4 elders at some point, which is actually pretty small from what I had seen as an adult. Like usually it's like what? I think usually like 8 to 12. Right?
Yeah, most people, most ex Jehovah's Witnesses I've spoken to, I think the smallest number was 4. So, and this was a smaller congregation in a smaller part of the world. So, were either of you baptized at any stage?
What was that?
Were either of you baptized at any stage?
Unfortunately.
I was baptized at 17. I was baptized a little older because my mom was inactive and stuff for a while after she got married to that one guy, and she went inactive for several years. So since I couldn't drive or anything, I couldn't go to the Kingdom Hall. So I got baptized a little later than some people. I don't remember what age Sydney was.
Yeah, I was only 14. I was in my first year of high school. So I couldn't drive a car. I couldn't get married or buy alcohol, but I could commit my entire life to a religion I didn't fully understand.
Yeah.
And Sydney, just describe to our listeners what your baptism ceremony looked like, felt like.
Like just the ceremony itself.
Yeah, like the build up to it. How many people were there? How did you feel at the time?
So to get baptized, you have to, it sounds so silly to say like, oh, you have to prove that you're ready for it. But like I said, a 14-year-old is not ready. Like you don't have the mental capacity to understand what you're signing up for, but I digress. So anywho, when I was still in middle school, a sister in the congregation, she was in her 20s. Like I thought she was the coolest person in the world. She started to have a Bible study with me. This was super common for like other members of the congregation to study with other people's children. Just, I mean, it makes sense. Like you want to relate to someone who's like not your parents.
Yeah.
Somebody you look up to as well.
To this day?
Oh, well, I mean at that time in your life.
Oh, yes, at the time, yeah, I thought that she was great. And so she started a Bible study with me, and we got together every week. We studied out of, a certain publication each week. And after we got through so many publications, it kind of just reached a point where it was like, well, like I've been through all the publications, like I know in my head at the time, like I'm like, oh, like I know this is the truth. And it just would be like the natural next step.
Yeah.
Like you don't usually study with someone forever. It's usually completed within like a year or two. So I studied for, I want to say like, I think it took about like a year and a half. And then I approached the congregation elders. I told them I wanted to be considered for baptism. So then they arranged 3 separate meetings, and at each meeting, a different elder in the congregation would go over certain questions with me about like the Jehovah's Witness faith.
Right.
To make
like
sure that I
had a quiz.
Yeah. To make sure I had like an understanding of it. And then, I basically got through all of those 3 rounds, so to speak, of questioning. They agreed that I could be baptized. And then at the following, what they call a circuit assembly. So that's when you have like congregations that are in like a certain area of where you live. And that's all part of a larger network called a circuit. So a couple times a year, they would have something called a circuit assembly. You would meet at this special place called an assembly hall, which is basically a giant kingdom hall. And so on the Saturday of the circuit assembly, they used to be 2 days long. They have a baptism part. Yeah. And so I, along with all the others who were getting baptized, we sat in the very front of the assembly hall. They had a talk about getting baptized, and they always say like, oh, this is for everyone, but it's primarily directed to the baptism candidates. And then after the talk is over, they make you stand up, and they actually project you from like cameras onto like these big projector screens, and they ask you 2 questions. Like, one, I can't even remember the exact wording, but one of them is like,
I think they've changed the wording of the question.
Yeah, I know they've done that in recent years, but I mean, it's all a dog and pony show. Like, they ask you the questions, you say yes. Like, nobody's going to say no. Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing there. Like, they ask you if you've repented of your sins. And I think the new question is like, do you accept this as God's organization?
Okay.
So I said yes. And then you go in the back, you get into a bathing suit, and then they have a pool on site, and you know, like, it was a really big deal. Like, you know, witnesses don't celebrate birthdays. So this was the first time in my entire life that I ever had any attention on me.
Yeah, some people give you gifts.
Yeah, so it was really exciting. Like, I walked out of the back room up to the pool, and like everyone's surrounding the pool taking your picture. Like, it's very exciting. And you know, you walk into the pool, there's a brother there, he explains what he's gonna do. You hold your nose, and then they do a full water immersion baptism, and then you come up, and that's it. Everybody applauds you. And you know, at the time it was like really overwhelming, but in such a wonderful way. Like, I thought I was doing such an amazing thing, and I knew that it was making my family really happy. And yeah, like I said, it was also the only time at that point in my life that any attention had been solely directed at me. So that felt really nice for a 14-year-old girl.
I mean, is it nerve-wracking as well to have a room full of people watching you?
I was shaking. I was really nervous about it, personally, because I
guess it depends on the person.
Like, I was really nervous, but there was only like probably 6 people getting baptized at mine, so there wasn't like a whole lot.
I think at 17 as well, and for somebody who's kind of dipped in and out of the church, that had a slightly different experience to what Sydney's mentioned, you're much more self-conscious at that age, and you kind of know when people are watching you, and you kind of little bit of sort of you know, just things that embarrass you more easily. And what was your baptism experience like, Sadie? Just describe that for the listeners.
It was very similar to Sid's. It was like, you know, I sat front and center right in front of the podium where the speaker gave like the baptism talk. I actually had 2 other friends getting baptized at the same time as me, so I sat with them. And so that kind of made it more exciting, I guess, like to get baptized with your friends. It was like special. So yeah, so you know, it's pretty much the same way Sydney described it. I think some circuits are a lot larger than others, so having just the 6 down there and standing up and saying the questions, like they made us like say it louder because there was only 6 of us, and hear everyone say yes, because everyone says it collectively. It's
Right.
not like you go through the down the line and say, did you say yes? Like, it's just everyone says yes at the same time. But I remember at mine, they made us say it louder for the people in the back. So that was kind of embarrassing, I guess. I don't know. I was super shy and self-conscious. But I was super worried about my hair too. I'm like, how am I going to get my hair done after I get dumped? Like, it's only because they do the baptism right at the lunch session. So they like have a morning session and then they have a lunch break, which is like usually an hour and a half long on like a baptism day. And then they have an afternoon session. So at the very end of the morning session, that's where they do the baptism. So everyone's like walking around, they can go to the pool and like get lunch and stuff. So I'm like worried about like doing my hair really fast, like so I can go out and like associate with my friends and stuff. I have a lot of hair, so it made me nervous. I think we were worried about that than anything.
It was funny. I was interviewing another ex-member the other day, and when he said, so I got baptized during the lunch break, and I was like, wait, just say that again. I had to ask him if there's people sitting with their sandwiches just in the audience, just eating their lunch and watching you all get dunked at the same time, which painted a strange picture for me. But did your younger brother get baptized at all?
Yeah, he didn't get baptized until much older. I had already moved out of the house and everything.
Okay.
He was probably, I don't think he was a teenager anymore when he got baptized.
Right. And I mean, you're 17 years old at this point. So are you employed? Do you have a job? And if so, like, are you making financial contributions to the church?
Yeah. So when I was 16, I got a job at like a fast food place. I got a full-time job because I wanted money to get out of the house. Like, honestly, I was wanting to move the moment I turned 18. So I worked a full-time job at a fast food restaurant. I went to school full-time. And then after I got baptized, I was pressured to pioneer too, which is like getting 50 out. They told me to auxiliary pioneer, which is like 50 hours a month. So between all of that, I'm like, I literally didn't even have a life.
I mean, I
was a teacher, yeah, working full time and dedicating 50 hours a month to the preaching work.
It's hard, isn't it? Because at 17, I mean, you start to reach that natural state where you are craving independence, yeah. And especially if you feel like you're being suppressed because of the church and the amount of time that you're expected to give to the Jehovah's Witnesses as well. I can imagine that it's frustrating for somebody at that age. So Sydney, what age were you when you got your first job? Were you involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses at this stage, and were you expected to contribute financially?
I got my first job when I was, I want to say 16. I was just working at a food place, and I wasn't expected to contribute. You mean like to contribute to give to the congregation, or?
Yeah.
Thankfully, no. I got a job just because I like wanted to start earning my own money and have more independence and control over things that I could buy. But no, I wasn't expected to donate to the congregation, thankfully. It also, to be honest, wasn't something that was like on my radar, because that's something that like witnesses, they pride themselves on, like, oh, if you come to a Kingdom Hall, like they'll never pass a collection plate. You don't have to tithe, and those things are true. They do have donation boxes. But I mean, they're not like this prominent fixture.
Okay.
But like growing up, my parents would only donate at like the major events, like the assemblies and the conventions. So like it wasn't even something that I would have ever thought about doing, to be honest.
Okay.
My mom did the opposite. My mom, she actually, even as a broke single mom, she would still donate at every meeting. She would go to the box in the back. She would have me and my brother go do it. So it was like a fun thing we did when we were little, you know? And whenever I got my job, she expected me to donate, even though I wasn't a baptized publisher yet. She still expected me to donate. And so she works in finance. So she made a whole plan for me how to spend my money. And part of it was she made me pay part of, like, she made me donate towards rent, towards her mortgage at, I think, 16 years old. And then she put out a little thing too for me to donate to the Kingdom Hall.
And do you think that in your congregation you were more pressured than Sydney's congregation to tithe?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't know about Sydney's congregation growing up, but mine, since it was in such a rural area, there was a lot of like older people there that were retired and sick, and they couldn't contribute a lot. So they always gave parts in local needs about contributing. So local needs is like specific for the congregation that they do like once a month. And they always were like throwing in the whole money thing into it for my congregation. Some congregations are a little bit more affluent and like people will donate and they don't do parts on it to try to guilt you as much. I think they do now, because I think so I've been out for 6 years. So they've changed a lot with the donations and stuff now. Like now they have like debit card readers and you can pay online. Like you can pay on, like you can go to like jw.org or something and like online, I think. So they've changed a lot since then. So it was a lot easier to get away with it than to not pay.
Yeah, so even during this lockdown, you're probably going to be like pressured if you're having, you know, these types of conference services where like so after, if you want to, you can go on the website. Interesting. So do you remember, Sadie, how old you were when you started pioneering, and how many hours a week roughly did you give to pioneering?
I started when I was 17. It was the summer after I got baptized. So it was like I'm out of school, and I was kind of expected to pioneer. And since I started auxiliary pioneering, which was only 50 hours a month, which I'm still working full time at this time and still trying to be a teenager. So it's like, I feel like it's a bit much to ask, especially when I'm like a teenager in a rural area driving down these long ass driveways that are like a mile long. You don't know what's at the end of it, but you're still expected to go knock on that door. I mean, here in the Southeast, someone could have a gun. Like people are so testy out in the rural area. Like it was really rural where I lived. And so it was really stressful to try to get 50 hours a month, let alone 70, which I started doing that. Well, I would still try to get 70 a month just to prove I could do it, so I could be approved to be a regular pioneer.
Right. Okay. And that was something you were aspiring to, become a regular pioneer?
Oh yeah, that's like what that women do. They become regular pioneers. Like my mom didn't encourage me to go to college. Well, technically that's wrong. She wanted me to go for business management. And she was like, you can only go if you stay at home and go to the community college and still pioneer and still work. And I was like kind of checking out at that point. I'm like, I really wanted to get out of the house because I didn't have a very good living situation. So I wasn't too thrilled about her not supporting me to go to college. So I never went. So my life goal was just to be a pioneer and just marry a rich elder.
Yeah, that sounds a bit I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn about your mum, and obviously I don't know what your relationship is like with her, but she's not supporting your decision to go to college, but she's expecting you to support her decision to donate money to the Jehovah's Witnesses, which sounds almost like narcissistic parenting.
Oh yeah, she's very narcissistic. I actually think Jehovah's Witnesses attract narcissists, like, because everyone in the congregation just seems that way.
Yeah. I think that's common within cults, though. The and I say this a lot in a lot of my episodes, the holier than thou mentality that a lot of people have, because they truly think that they are the ones that have found the truth and they are the ones that will be saved, and everybody else is wrong. So the holier than thou mentality is definitely something that is common within cults and sects like this one. And what about you, Sydney? Did you pioneer, and what did your weekly pioneering hours look like?
So I never regular pioneered. I just could not. So after I got baptized, like I said, I was only 14. I couldn't even like drive a car, so I was completely dependent on other people if I wanted to go out preaching. My family, was consistent in the preaching work, but it was like the bare minimum of being consistent. Like we would go out every Saturday morning and we would go from like 9 to 12.
Right.
But outside of that, both my parents worked. So like I said, I'd have to rely on other people. I would auxiliary pioneer occasionally, but it would just be like month by month.
Right.
I did that throughout the years. And my last year of being a witness, even though I wasn't a pioneer, because that was like, it was my last year of being a witness, and I started thinking to myself, I actually wasn't allowed to pioneer. I was on something called private reproof. I had like gotten in trouble, but nobody knew about it. And I really wanted to pioneer, and I wasn't allowed. And I remember I was so upset, and I was like crying in the Kingdom Hall bathroom, and I was just like so upset. And then it like dawned on me. I'm like, well, it's not like I'm not allowed to like go out in service. Like I can still go out in service and like get the pioneer hours. I just don't have the title. And then I kind of started thinking like, why does this like title matter so much? Like it kind of got the wheels turning. But yeah, so anyway, like my last year of being a witness, even though I didn't have the title of being a pioneer, I did get pioneer hours, which is crazy when I think about it, because I worked full time. But a couple times a week after work, I would go out in service. I'd either go like preaching in the evening, or other sisters would have Bible studies I would go on. And then on my weekends, when it's supposed to be like my day off, I would start preaching at 6 a.m, not going door to door, but like going to like bus stops and yard sales. Right. I would do that from like 6 to 2. And then on Sunday, which is our meeting day, I would still go out in service either before or after the meeting.
Okay. And I'm not sure this is something you want to talk about, but you mentioned getting into trouble and being told that you weren't allowed to go out pioneering. Would you like to tell us what you got in trouble for?
Yeah, I don't care. So at the time I was married to another Jehovah's Witness. As you're probably familiar with, like Jehovah's Witnesses are definitely not supposed to have any type of sexual contact before you say I do. I mean, that goes like
even kissing's borderline. Like,
yeah, I mean, pretty much like anything from like the collarbones down is like a no-go.
Right. Okay. Collarbones can be very sensual, so
yeah, so like some witnesses take it to more of an extreme than others. I know some who didn't even kiss until they were like at the altar saying I do. I was not one of those witnesses. My husband and I at the time, we had, as the terminology that witnesses used, we committed fornication before we were married. And it just, I always felt so guilty about it because they talk about it all the time. Like, if you're a fornicator, like, you're not going to survive Armageddon. Like, Jehovah sees what you do in private. Maybe nobody else knows about it, but he does. And so even though we had been married for several years, the guilt was killing me. And so we had what was called an elders meeting, and we confessed that we had done these things before we were legally married. And so that's why they gave us what's called a private reproof. So they took our privileges away. So we couldn't have the title of like pioneers. We couldn't give talks. We couldn't comment during question and answer parts at meetings. But we were still witnesses. Like, nobody knew that had happened.
Right.
And yeah, so.
Yeah,
but looking back, it's so silly.
It's interesting that it just goes to show you the level of control and manipulation that some of these groups have over their members. When you're upset that you can't go out and raise awareness and recruit members of the church as punishment, it's and that affects you to the point where you're in the toilets crying because you've admitted to this thing that that in your core you believe is going to get you into some spiritual trouble, and your punishment is not being able to go out and work for free on behalf of the church, which
that doesn't sound like a punishment for me.
Yeah, exactly. But the level of indoctrination is it's very interesting how these groups manage to have that type of effect. But at the time, I can imagine it was absolutely devastating to feel that way, to feel like, that you couldn't go and do for the church what you wanted to do. But Sadie, did you have any type of relationship with anybody in your congregation?
Like, did I get married? Or
did you go on a chaperoned date with anyone?
Oh, I've even done a couple unchaperoned ones because I'm a rebel like that.
Ooh, interesting.
because it was stupid enough. I did it in my small rural community, and they saw me on a picnic date at a park, and they went and ratted to the elders that I went on a date without a chaperone.
And what was the repercussions of those actions?
They were just like, should be chaperone, and then they asked me so many nasty questions, like, did he touch your breast? Like, they would ask me weird questions like that when I'm on an innocent park at a date. Or sorry, my medicine's kicking in. Yeah, it was just like a really innocent, like, we had like Subway sandwiches or something. Like, it wasn't, it was like before I went to work. Like, it was just something like just grabbing lunch and sitting by the lake together. And they kind of asked me graphic questions like that. Like, men that I'm not even like 18 yet, and they're asking me those questions.
Yeah, I find that interesting. A lot of the people I've spoken to about situations where they've had to go and report abuse to an elder or elders, and the elders have asked them to give detailed descriptions about things that happened. It's creepy to the point where I question whether they are trying to achieve some type of gratification through the experiences that other people are having that they know they can't have themselves.
It almost seems like that because it is such a repressed like religion, like sexually. Like, you can't even, like, they even tried, I know back in the day they used to say that you couldn't even, like, they would try to like mitigate what you did in the bedroom with your own spouse.
Yeah, like, they've only just recently like gone back and basically said that what you do with your married spouse is your business. But they used to literally say that you couldn't do oral or anal sex. And it's like, why is that anybody's business?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people didn't listen to it anyway, but they would certainly make you feel guilty about it from the platform.
Yeah, well, it's exactly what Sydney was just saying. You know, they could say, like, in most religions, or even, you know, I've read about this in the Unification Church, that they would say that sex should last under 2 minutes and should only be in the missionary position, with the woman on her back and the man on top. And you know, it should only be once a week, and it should only be to reproduce. So, you know, it's the same thing that you mentioned before, Sydney. If you were to be having any other type of sexual intercourse with your married spouse that didn't fit within those guidelines, you might feel guilty or pressured in kind of you know, ratting on yourself almost, about the other types of sexual intercourse that you're having, you know, in your marital bed, which is strange. It's strange that people feel they need to confess the most intimate details of their relationships. But I guess that's another part of the type of techniques that are used by these types of movements. Sadie, do you remember having any body in your congregation that identified in the LGBT community?
I actually did when I got older. So when I turned 18, I moved away, and I kind of lived like a nomad, but like a Jehovah's Witness one, like just crashing with families and stuff for a while. But I ended up in a more like populated area here in the Southeast, so there was like a wide variety of like different people. So in one congregation I did go to, like, people knew, but they never talked about it. Like, I was friends with the guy, or I should say person. I was friends with the person. I mean, I could kind of tell because I live in an area where there's a huge LGBTQ community. And so, I mean, you can kind of tell. I didn't assume, but, you know, I didn't bring it up or anything. But he did, dang it, they did confess to the elders that they had those feelings. And then they told one of their ministerial servants to become like closer friends with this person, just so that they could guide them and get them away from that kind of thing.
Right.
This person was not to be trusted, the ministerial servant blabbed his mouth to everybody.
Yeah.
I left a heartbeat. Like, he like got kicked out of his house at like a young age. Yeah, it was really sad. I got really mad at, because I was friends with the ministerial servant, and I got so pissed off. I was like, it wasn't your business to tell, and you're a ministerial servant. You're supposed to keep things confidential. I was so mad. I get worked up about this stuff.
No, I think that's right though, isn't it? Because it's a difficult and confusing time in a person's life anyway. You know, I just had another interview this afternoon where we're talking about when you get to a certain age and your body starts flooding with hormones and you're experiencing all these physical and psychological changes, and then also to realize that you perhaps don't conform to a heteronormative and then to be a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses as well, which is very patriarchal, very man and woman, you know, get married and all that stuff. It must be, it's like an extra layer of confusion, and then to have that information made public to the rest of the church and potentially be shunned by other members, and then, as you mentioned, have the tragic thing of being kicked out of your home and not having the support of your family and friends. That's absolutely tragic. That is heartbreaking.
I would actually get arguments with like my in-laws at the time, because like they would say some off-color comment about, you know, LGBTQ, and I would kind of just like throw back at them. I'm like, because they would refer to it as a choice, it's disgusting, and blah blah blah. Because they were super into, they were super Jehovah's Witnesses too, and I'm like, why would my reasoning at the time is it's I don't feel like it's a choice if they feel like they're basically they're going through war in their head right now because they feel one way, but then they're told it's the wrong way, but they can't help it. And so then they kind of like sometimes are like, I know some like hardcore like it's like really like it made me cry sometimes because like I knew some people were secret like closeted and like they would just like get really upset.
Yeah. I mean, even having like a attraction or feelings towards a worldly person in your school or college that you might feel those same types of shameful and sinful feelings because you can't affiliate yourself with somebody worldly. So it's definitely difficult. Sydney, what about yourself? Do you have any remembrance of any persons identifying as LGBT in your congregation?
Well, it's kind of funny. So my first quote unquote boyfriend that I had as a witness, we were very young. I was 14 and he was 16. He is gay.
Okay.
And we're actually still friends to this day. He's obviously an ex-witness, but there were definitely others growing up. Like there were certain men, they were married and had children, but they had just very effeminate qualities. And looking back, like people could be very cruel. They would talk about them behind their backs and presume things about their sexuality, or witnesses are just, they're not LGBTQ friendly, they're not LGBTQ understanding. After actually my experience with my first boyfriend, he and I, like I said, we were very young, we broke up, and it was actually very shortly after that he left the witnesses and started living his truth openly as a gay man. And so many people were just like, why would he choose this? He's sick in the head, and just said very derogatory, cruel things. And even then it clicked, and I realized being heterosexual or homosexual, whatever you identify as, is not a choice. It's who you are. Because I have a very clear memory of my friend / ex-boyfriend telling me, like, Sydney, if I could be straight, I would be. I prayed for hours and hours for Jehovah to fix me because I am gross and I'm broken. He said my life would be so much easier if I were straight, but I'm just not, and I don't want to live my life without a partner. He wanted what most people want, is a romantic partner in life. And I got into a lot of debates with older people, my own friends, about whether or not somebody does have control in making that choice of their sexuality.
Yeah, it's those types of situations that are so heartbreaking. People wishing to be something that they're not, just to make their lives more comfortable because of the thoughts and feelings of other people around them, which is never the answer, is it? It's never, you should never have to change who you are and all of that, because of other people.
Family abandons for it too. Like, like getting kicked out and never talking to you ever again. Like, I just,
Yeah. It's
It was always hard for me to comprehend. Even as like, when I was a super Jehovah's Witness, like super into it, I still had a really hard time comprehending that. And I think that was part of the reason why I started waking up. Was the process.
But I feel we're sort of that generation now, and I've spoken about this a little bit as well, where it seems so archaic to be homophobic or racist, or transphobic, because the world is just moving away from that now. Policies and laws are changing all over the place. We have friends, family members who are members of the LGBT community group. Most of us are allies of that community group, if we don't identify as an actual member of it. It's and we've seen from the Black Lives Matter protests that have taken part mostly in America, but also other parts of the Western world as well, that most of us don't agree with historic racism of any minority group or ethnicity group. So it's I always ask this question because it's historic for Christianity and religions to be dismissive or even to persecute the LGBT community. And it's almost like, for those, unless members are born into these religions now and never have the chance to experience what we experience in our everyday lives now, people will stop, hopefully eventually joining these groups, because they'll stop joining the groups because they'll be like, well, I've got a friend who's who's transgender, and by me joining this church, I can't speak to my friend anymore. So hopefully that's
phasing out. That's what a lot of people. So I'm like on like an XJW like subreddit, which is how I found you. And a lot of people say that people like just with all what you were saying, like happening these days, like Black Lives Matter and like, the LGBTQ community, like being more active and everyone's feeling more safe to like open up about themselves. They're not going to convert to that shit, whatever. Like they're going to think their Jehovah's Witnesses are crazy. So like most people say that the governing body's only hope to keep like momentum going is to like have basically children, like people born in, and baptize them young.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's why it's encouraged that you marry somebody in your congregation like as soon as possible. So yeah. Just moving on to a subject that always gets me riled up, and that's around the patriarchy of the Jehovah's Witnesses. So why do you think, I'll ask Sydney, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll ask you this question first, Sydney. Why do you think the positions of power and responsibility within the Jehovah's Witnesses are only ever given to men?
Well, you have to go back to who founded Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know how familiar you are with our history, but it started with a man named Charles Taze Russell, and then it transferred over to a man named Joseph Rutherford. But when it was founded, as well as just the time in human history at that time, like women didn't have any rights, they didn't have any responsibilities other than to reproduce and raise children, and that's followed suit. And I think it just helps to keep the congregation in line, the whole organization as a whole, because like if you had men and women in power in the congregations making decisions, I think things would look very differently, and I don't think that they would like how that would look. So they say that, only men are allowed to lead the congregation. But I was actually just thinking about that. like, honestly, it doesn't make sense, because if you look into the Bible, if you still believe in it, there were women prophets. So why were women allowed to be prophets in Bible times, or should I say blessed to be prophets? But like, we can't, you know, like, give instruction facing the congregation. Like, we have to give these like pseudo fake like experiences with like other women in the congregation.
Do you agree with what Sydney has said, Sadie?
Yeah, I totally agree. And Jehovah's Witnesses, they like to use the scriptures to bend and twist everything into their way. So there's this one scripture where they talk about headship.
Oh, hate that one.
Yeah, I forget which one it is because I never want to remember it. But they always quote that one when they talk about women needing to be in submission to their husband. That's the like into men in general. Like, even if you're like a little boy that's baptized and you're in a service group with only women, the little boy basically has to pray for all the older women. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, if he's baptized, he has to like take the lead.
Yeah, if a 10-year-old has to take the lead in like a service group of like maybe like 8 other women or so, it's just like, it's mind-blowing how like they really take that scripture and just like run with it.
So sounds like it's just a way to keep women subservient to the men,
absolutely.
which is very.
We use Proverbs a lot too, I think. Like, talking about how like a precious wife is like whatever. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, isn't it? Because we're talking about how equal rights and LGBT rights have come on in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. There's still a huge way to go, of course. There's a huge way to go with all the rights that we are seeing changes in. But we're fighting for equal pay in jobs, and we're fighting for equality to men. And then there's movements like this one that have millions of followers worldwide that are preaching the opposite of that message, which is frustrating for women. I think.
I think part of I'm going to say another thing that Jehovah's Witnesses do is they really try to talk about the women to make us feel better, I think. Like,
oh, it's very patronizing.
Scary. They're just like, oh, but you're precious, and they call us a weak vessel, which always pisses me off.
Based off of another scripture.
A weaker muscle.
Weaker vessel. Like they always refer to us as like a tiny, like little, like teacup. Like, yeah.
Sorry, Sydney, what were you just saying about the scripture?
Oh, it's just based off of a scripture where it describes women as the weaker vessel. Like, we are weaker than men. It's not our fault. It's how we were, quote unquote, like created, because we were formed from Adam's rib. So therefore,
it's difficult as well, isn't it? Because this scripture was written how long ago? And they'll just always use that archaic writing to justify the decisions and the reasons why they are keeping women in subservient positions, and putting themselves, as in men, putting themselves in higher positions of power, positions of responsibility, expecting the women to go pioneering, go door to door, give up any type of a further education or formal training in any kind of profession, encouraging women to take up menial jobs like cooking and cleaning, so that they can make sure they're still there to take care of the men and pioneer for Jehovah, and it's just, it feels oppressive, and it feels suffocating when I think about all of the opportunities that I have that other women in the Jehovah's Witnesses might not have. Like I'm hosting a podcast, for example. In the Jehovah's Witnesses, if they were to start a JW podcast, it wouldn't be hosted by a woman.
No. They might bring on a woman as like a guest, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, they have a podcast, you were saying,
Well, they
Sydney?
have, like it's not. They have a JW broadcasting. We have like less than a minute, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
I can't think of any specific about the congregation. Well, there is one thing, but I'm not going to touch on that yet. But I know for a fact that, elders will withhold information from wives about their husbands.
Right. Okay. What do you mean specifically?
Okay, so I was in a situation where there is this older guy. I had known him since I was a child. Like he was a friend of the family.
Right.
And we reconnected years, I was like a grown woman, married, whatever. We reconnected at it was like a party, like it was like an anniversary party or something of like a mutual friend. And we talked and hung out. Like he was really close to my first stepdad. So, I felt comfortable with him. I was like, this is cool reconnecting with an old friend. But he totally misread that situation and tried to make advances on me.
Right.
He started sending me pornography. This man's a ministerial servant and he has a wife and he has 2 little babies.
Right.
And he's doing this crap with me after only re-meeting me as an adult. It was really alarming. But I didn't really say anything at the time because I didn't feel like I needed to. I kept telling him that, he kept trying to get me to go out to lunch with him, and he wanted to see me, and I was going to a pool party. He would ask for pictures of me in a bikini and shit like that.
Right.
It was very, very uncomfortable, and I was like, stop it. You gotta stop texting me.
Yeah, it almost begs the question as well, if he is having this experience with you after only reconnecting with you on such a short amount of time, whether he is living this other
double life.
Yeah, with other people, or if obviously he's craving something that he doesn't have, if he is willing to go to those lengths and jeopardize his place in the church and his marriage. So very interesting. What about you, Sydney? Do you remember any of the times the elders may have withheld anything from the congregation?
So to be honest, I really can't think of something that I experienced where it was oh, I know that they hid information from the congregation. But I mean that's kind of the elders' MO, is to hide things from the congregation. That's why they have elders meetings and only elders can go to them. They're very secretive.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have that special book, don't they, that nobody else is allowed to see?
Yeah, and what's interesting is, I don't know if you flipped through it at all, but actually in the beginning of the book, it says that, if you want to get your book spiral bound or the covers laminated, and a brother who has, I don't know, the capability or the machinery to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So they'll say, they say in the book, oh, if you want to have it done, that's fine. But if the brother's doing it, is not an elder, he has to be watched the whole time. So he's not reading the book. And they said sisters are not allowed to touch the book.
Wow. Okay. So that's another example of the weaker vessel.
Exactly. We're not even allowed to touch their special book.
They don't even know the book exists, really. They don't even know any kind of content. They're just oh, it's just elders learning how to do judicial committees, and people don't realize how disgusting, like some of it actually is, like how much some of the things they say in that book. It's easy to find online. I can send you a link.
But... Yeah, it's just interesting other people's experiences around this book, and you know, sort of the big like, oh, it's, you can't read it or touch it, but it's just interesting because I know that there's a lot of elders in the country at the moment that I'm in who are being taken to court for historical abuse allegations, because people are now coming forward to say that they were sexually abused by members in positions of power in their congregation. And at the time, even if people were talking about it and saying that they had been abused and disclosing the information, it was brushed aside because of the most ridiculous 2-witness rule, which I just can't get my head around, because sexual abuse is hardly ever going to have a second witness there to say, oh yeah, they were sexually abused. So this special book obviously gives the elders a step-by-step guide on what to do if somebody comes forward to disclose sexual abuse, which will include things like encourage the family not to go to the police or authorities. Get every detail that you can from the victims, which will include them having intimate meetings with the elders where they have to relive every single detail and meticulously describe the abuse that they had inflicted on them. And then obviously then when they have their abuser in the room with them and the elders and they have a meeting, it is usually going down the route that because there was no witness, the person will have to answer to Jehovah, and there's nothing that the elders can do to take it forward, which just is absolutely, it's how horrendous must that be for
investigate that shit? What the fuck do they think you're thinking? Like, I just don't understand. Like, I was in a situation, here, I'll tell you about my stepdad real quick. So like my second stepdad, my mom divorced her first one. I don't know, I was like 14. And then in my friend group at the congregation, some of my friends had like older brothers and like they had older friends. So I started hanging out with some like older people, like in the late 20s, early 30s. And one of them acted really weird towards me all the time. And then he started dating my mom, but he still acted weird. And he eventually professed his love to me. He was in love with me at the age of like, he said he fell in love with me when he met me at 14. And he married my mom to be close to me.
Right.
And I eventually the elders found out about that. He never did anything, but he was always really weird. And he always said he wanted to get me drunk and like take me out on trips and have fun. And I'm like, you know, reading the situation, I'm not stupid. I'm like, no, okay, no, you're just no. And then he would always tell me he loved me. And like, you know, my mom, when I was growing up, she would always get mad if I said I never loved my stepdad back. So I'm like, yeah, I love you too, whatever. And he's like, no, but I really love you. You'll understand one day. Like he would say weird, creepy shit like that.
Do you think your mum had an idea of what was happening?
I told her that, you know, it was known amongst my friend group, as, you know, they married when I was 15. So, I mean, before they got married, I told her, like, my best friend knew for a fact that he said he had a crush on me and he really liked me. And she told me because it freaked her out. And my other friends, yeah. So I told my mom, I was like, I really don't feel comfortable with you marrying this guy. And then she just accused me. This is the narcissistic personality coming out. You just don't want me to be happy. You never do. Yeah. She wants me. So she married him anyway. Then all this shit happens. And then like, she doesn't even believe me whenever. So like he found out like in my journal that I had wrote about him and how disgusting I thought he was for saying all that shit. And I wrote about it constantly. So it really affected me. Once he told me while we were still living in the same house. Who does that? And he also found in my journal that I had a boyfriend at the age of 17, and I'm not supposed to have a boyfriend. My parents actually made me sign a contract saying I wouldn't have a boyfriend. Like, that's how crazy they were. So my stepdad found my journal, read through it, got mad at me for saying all the mean things about him. And then he went to the elders and then said, look what she said right here. She kissed a boy. Like, she's not supposed to have a boyfriend. And then they also interrogated me at that time about, did y'all have intercourse?
Oh gosh, right, yeah.
They would ask the intercourse questions. And I'm like, no. I'm like, oh my God. So like, my stepdad kicked me out. And the elders didn't do anything about him because it was he said versus what I said.
Right.
And then there were 5 other girls that he groomed after I left.
Okay.
But he would post weird things on social media. This is like when, social media started getting big. So he would post really weird things, not realizing people can see it. And people were like, side-eyeing him. We're like,
So you'd drawn the elders' attention. You'd drawn the elders' attention to the fact that he was potentially a predator, and he did go on to groom other girls. So
unsuccessfully that I know of. I mean, who knows? Honestly,
was there any legal action taken? Is your mum still with this guy?
He's still with him. Yeah, that's why we don't have a relationship.
Right. Okay.
I refuse to have a relationship because now she believes me. After she realized I wasn't just being a sad teenager, just wanting to cause a ruckus. She finally believed me after there were like 4 other girls that came forward. Like after I had gone out, like got married and started living my life, he kept doing this for years.
And were these other girls members of the church?
Yeah.
And when they came forward to talk about it, is he still a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, he is. So is my mom. But they won't do anything about it because, well, technically no action's been taken. But I'm like, he's telling these girls he wants to go, like, tell the parents or something. Like, he at least give him a warning that he's got a big old red flag over his head, but they won't say anything.
That's awful. It's scary because it left unchecked these people. Obviously I'm speculating here because I'm not an expert, but I've listened to enough true crime to assume that these people get away with things over and over and over again to the point where they almost feel untouchable, and that's when they will act out, or progress, which is absolutely terrifying. So I really hope at some point he is put in his place and kept an eye on. What about you, Sydney? Do you remember any notable experiences within your time that are questionable?
So for me, thankfully, I didn't have to deal with any experiences, at least that I can recall, where I had to deal with questionable members of the congregation. I do have memories where I know that there definitely were some, but nothing that overly affected me or that I was aware of, if that makes sense. And this experience involves someone who was just a study at the time, so they weren't even an official witness. But I was a teenager. I was 16, 17. My sibling was in her early 20s. And I remember this guy started coming to the hall. He was someone's study, and he just was super friendly, and he just used to he always wanted to like say hi and talk to like the young girls in the hall, and he would like want us to like hug him.
Yeah, that's okay.
But thankfully, like I said, like he wasn't like an actual brother, and the person who was studying with him, well, I don't know if it was him or if other people complained or like what this situation was, but they did like do something about it. Like it reached a point where like he wasn't allowed to talk to anybody who was underage. I don't know the exact details, but then he just stopped talking to me. So like I said, it didn't really affect me.
So something has happened there behind the scenes where he is obviously told that he should stop communicating with young people. Right, okay, which is also very creepy and untoward. So do you remember when, why, and how you ended up leaving Sydney, the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, of course I do. I've technically been out for 5 years. I got disfellowshipped, and when I got disfellowshipped, I was a true believer. Like I believed in the elders meetings and the disfellowshipping process, and I was all in. But about 6 months into being disfellowshipped, I was being shunned by everyone that I ever knew. I didn't have any friends on the outside because I never developed relationships with people on the outside, but I honestly never even developed the social skills to form relationships with like non-witnesses, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was just like really lonely, and I was getting really, I'm an anxious person by nature, and like I just felt I was anxious all the time because I was like, when am I going to get reinstated? When am I going to have like my friends back? And I started seeing people online that were witnesses, and they were doing things that they should have been getting disfellowshipped for.
Right.
But they just kept their mouth shut. They didn't turn themselves in, and nobody turned them in either, or whatever. And it was just really frustrating seeing all the hypocrisy, and I was like, how could God allow this to happen? And so I opened Pandora's box and I hopped on the internet. And that's something that you are definitely not supposed to do as a witness. You're constantly told not to look at outside sources for information about witnesses, and but I did anyway. I kind of just wanted to see like how long I would be disfellowshipped for. I was looking to maybe find other people and see what their experiences were. But I opened Pandora's box. I went down a rabbit hole, and literally by like the end of that day, I was like, oh my God, like this isn't what I thought it was. This is all a lie. And like it was an earthquake in my mind, and my whole world ended that day.
Do you have memories of going and doing worldly activities and feeling the fear still for a little while of and the repercussions of what might happen because of the things that you began doing outside of the church?
A fear in what way?
Just that you are going to not be saved.
No. Once I like woke up, I was like, don't think that anyone has the authority to like really make those calls. Like I'm just gonna try my best to be a decent person. But it's the reason I asked you to clarify is because to this day, though, in regards to repercussions, I still deal with being afraid of repercussions. Even though I woke up, I went ahead and got reinstated because I kind of wanted to play them at their own game. So I got reinstated so everyone could still talk to me and socialize with me, but I just faded. I stopped going to meetings. I'm what they call inactive. And, like in one sense, like that's nice. But at the same time, I feel like I have to kind of like I have two separate lives. And I do get anxious sometimes about if they were to bleed over.
Right.
Like, for example, I would really love to decorate my home for the holidays, but I live in the same excuse me, I live in the same area as my family, so they would, see that.
Right.
And that would just be like a huge upheaval if they knew that I celebrated holidays.
Right. And where does your relationship stand with your family members at the moment?
So I really only have my parents and my sibling. They all talk to me. We kind of go through highs and lows. We're sometimes closer than others times. Okay. The biggest thing that keeps us together is my child, because they want to be involved in my child's life. But even that's starting to kind of give me anxiety, and it's difficult because my child is getting older now. And the other day we were at my parents' house and they were taking a bath and they started singing the happy birthday song. And my mom was like, oh my God, like, how did he learn that? Why is he singing that? And I'm like, I guess they did it in school. And I was like, well, I don't even know what goes on in his school right now because of COVID. I'm not even allowed to touch the front door. So like, I really don't know what they're doing. And
but at the same time, he's not going to a school for Jehovah's Witnesses, and he's not in the church. So he's going to have these experiences, isn't he?
Yeah.
You're going to hear it on TV and like movies and stuff too. Like, exactly.
Things for worldly people. So, I mean, do you think there's ever going to be a time where your parents are kind of pressure you to have your son be a member of the church?
They already do. It'll come up every few months. My mom will want to have like a heart-to-heart with me, and the most recent one actually happened last month, and she was like, I'm so worried about you, and she referenced my child, and she said, because I love you both so much, but like if Armageddon comes, like she said that like she couldn't be responsible for my child. I'm the parent, so I'm responsible. So like if basically like she said that if Armageddon were to come tomorrow, my child and I probably would not make it. And she's very worried about that because I'm not raising him as a witness.
Right. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like you're gonna be pressured into it, or are you going to stand your ground?
I have to stand my ground. I can't in good conscience withhold the life that my child deserves. And if for some reason he grows up and when they're 18 and they decide to study with witnesses and become one, then that's their choice. But I want it to be their choice. And it won't be if they're indoctrinated from such a young age.
Right. Yeah. So as it stands at the moment, you've obviously moved away from the church, you've got your own family, you are still keeping contact with your family who remain Jehovah's Witnesses, although that relationship is strained. But for the most part, you made the right decision, and you're in a much better place spiritually. Do you have any type of relationship with God at all?
No.
So do you consider yourself like atheist, agnostic?
Yeah, I'm most comfortable with acknowledging myself as an agnostic.
Okay. And what about you, Sadie? Your stepdad kicked you out when you were 17, but you'd already been saving money to move out of the house. So was this the start of your journey away from the Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, not really. I mean, I actually thought that they helped me a lot because, I mean, the elders told me not to say anything about what had happened at between with my stepdad. My elder said, don't say anything to anybody. And I was like, oh, fuck that. So whenever I moved congregations, I mean, my friends knew, like, I told them what happened. And so, like, some of their parents were a little compassionate and they would take me in for like a couple months and then ask me to leave. And then, I mean, I turned 18 that summer. Like, it literally, like, I was only 18 for like a hot second. So I don't know what the hell is going on in the world. I don't know how to get a better job. I'm not in school. I'm like basically living, my closet was my car. And I kind of just floated around for a while, like somebody be selling a house and it's been empty for 2 months and they just want somebody there. So I would like live there. Or I found a worldly lady that needed a nanny, but also gave me a job. So like she also gave me like an actual job, like in healthcare. So I did that, kind of just scraped by. And during this time, I was dating somebody, and in the congregation I was going to, and which caused a huge mess. Like nobody liked the fact that some weird 18-year-old was dating somebody else in the congregation. I mean, he was my age too, so I'm like, it's not a big deal. And me and him ended up getting married. I stayed very much into the organization. I struggled a lot with it because everybody was expecting me to be like some pioneer wife, and like it just wasn't in me. Like, it's just so hard knocking on doors all the freaking time, and I was just getting really burnt out, really tired. Never actually pioneered. I was always like saying I'm working towards it. So like, let's see, I was married for maybe a year or two before I got laid off from my job. It's when the market crashed, and I just started pioneering. My ex-husband got a really good job, and so I just decided not to worry about working, because why would I? Like, I have the perfect setup as a wife of an elder. I can pioneer and just sit pretty, like, and keep the house clean. So that's what I was expected to do, but it drove me nuts. It made me depressed. I was never happy. I wasn't happy with him because we married young. I was also, I don't know, like, so I was really starting to struggle with the whole idea of like the patriarchy and the religion. And that's why I think that's when I started to pull away from it. I was like, it's not okay for me to be this unhappy and not have a divorce if I wanted one. So without getting like, fellowship and stuff. So I got a divorce anyway, and I remarried somebody else that same year. They were also a Jehovah's Witness, but whenever I left my ex, the elders wouldn't listen to me. Like, I was telling them about like the emotional abuse I had to endure, and that's why I needed to leave him. Kept telling me to stay with him, endure it. Oh, I was they're like, oh, well, but yeah, you're the wife. Like, you
Yeah.
thing. Like, my wife hated me too at first. Like, that was literally one of their arguments, was like, my wife tried to leave me one time before and we're still together 50 years later. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's no.
That's not the answer. No.
Yeah. So I went through like a committee and everything. They weren't listening to me at all. So then I just decided to throw a grenade into it and just go like commit adultery, basically, because I had already filed like divorce paperwork. I mean, it was already like at the courthouse. So I was kind of seeing a guy at the same time, and like, because we kind of like started hooking up like right during that time, because I was just so over like everything. So I told them about that, and they disfellowshipped the both of us, me and the other guy. And I was kind of relieved, to be honest. I was like, thank God I don't have to deal with this anymore. Like, get me out of here. And I actually moved states. Like, I totally went AWOL. And I married the other guy, which was also a very dumb decision. And he struggled a lot too with the fact that he was really close to his family, and he hated that they wouldn't see him for anything. They didn't even hardly get a chance to meet. And
so a pretty wild period of time from moving out from your mum and stepdad to actually leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, like I actually just woke up fully just a couple years ago. It was actually during that Leah Remini special.
Okay.
I was already set up with everything, because my ex and I didn't go through the motions whenever we were disfellowshipped together. We tried to, but it was just too exhausting. And I mean, having the space, but I took a break from going to meetings. So like when I got disfellowshipped, I stopped going like cold turkey. And then when I remarried later, like several months later, we started going back, and that was too hard. So we kind of fizzled out. And then I was just like kind of done with I just didn't want to deal with it. I had to deal with my sister-in-law for a bit, because my father-in-law was dying at the time, and she was being such a brat about it. Like, just screaming at me that I just need to get reinstated, and then I'm like killing her brother because he won't get reinstated because of me. And this is while his dad is dying, and like I've only met the guy once, and it was just so much to handle that I kind of just like fully checked out. And then like later that special came on, the Leah Remini special, on the Scientology one. It was for Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was like, you know what? I can't be a part of this anymore. I'm like, if Armageddon Israel, I'm going down with a ship, and I don't even care. That was kind of what kind of helped me check out, start researching everything, and actually getting online and reading about, the Australian Royal Commission, watching like, I watched, I don't know if I'm allowed to like endorse this, but I watch Lloyd Evans all the time, John Cedars. He was pretty instrumental because he does like YouTube videos, and he has a pretty big following. He was on that special.
Yeah.
And just getting online and reading everything, finding that XJW Reddit, I was like, oh God.
Yeah, the Reddit's got a lot of people in it, the XJW subreddit. So it sounds as if both of you had that moment of just like, nope, this is it, I'm out, I can't do anymore. I've done a bit of research now. I know that this is not what I was taught to believe. There's some things here that don't add up, things that aren't right. And then you both kind of had that moment where you're like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, Sydney, what advice would you give to Jehovah's Witnesses who are currently thinking about leaving the religion?
I would say to get your ducks in a row. If you're really lucky, and let's say you're like young, still living at home, and have your parents like financially support you, I would say take advantage of that, like kind of fake it till you make it, but use that opportunity to, maybe like get a job, like save up money, like build a network of support outside of the organization. If you are older and you don't have that luxury, it kind of still goes like, if you're thinking about leaving, like make sure you have all your ducks in a row, like, because depending on which route you want to go, like sometimes you can't like unring the bell, so to speak, like
Yeah.
like actually like the person I'm dating now is an ex-witness. We knew each other when we were witnesses, and he got disfellowshipped years and years ago, and he just knew he didn't want to be a witness anymore. He didn't at the time care if it was like the true religion or not. He just knew he didn't want to live his life that way. So he just like, he was really young and he just went and got disfellowshipped, but he didn't have anything planned. His parents kicked him out of the house when he was definitely not financially prepared, and almost a decade later he's still paying for those financial missteps. And it's like, in hindsight, he realizes like, he shouldn't have jumped the gun like that. There are other people that I've met through in-person XJW support groups, and they, when they first started waking up, they like were so fired up about it that they were opening their mouths and talking to people, and they ended up getting disfellowshipped. And they weren't ready, and they have said, oh, I wish I would have just kind of maybe gone to therapy and like dealt with it that way, and then just faded, and then they still could have like kind of a relationship with their family.
Yeah.
Just don't do anything rash.
Right.
Like anything that you want to do today could be done tomorrow or next week. Get a therapist.
Yeah, I think that the advice that you've given there about getting your ducks in order, so to speak, is a very, very good way of putting it. I know a few people have spoken about making sure that they have some financial backup before they leave the church or their respective movement. So that's a really good piece of advice. And therapy, again, there's all types of therapy. There's therapy specific for spiritual abuse, cult survivor therapy as well. So again, I think that's another brilliant piece of advice. So Sadie, what is there any advice? I know that Sydney's just given us a great answer and covered a lot of the bases, but is there any advice that you would give people looking to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses movement?
It's such a hard thing because the way I left, I just kept throwing grenades and everything. I was just like, everything was always something explosive, and it just kind of built up, and I was always unprepared. Like when I left my first husband, I was extremely unprepared. When my second husband left me, I was extremely unprepared, and that was right when we were waking up together. So I was always in a crazy emotional state. So I was lucky enough to have a father that was not a Jehovah's Witness to fall back on. So I always end up just running back to him for if I end up like, needing help, like regarding like a place to live, because, I don't have a strong education. I have a hard time getting a job. So it's like whenever I left my first husband, I didn't work for almost freaking 5 years. So yeah, getting your ducks in a row is a really good idea, and try to keep your calm and don't throw grenades in it like I always did. I would still go for that college education if you're young enough for it, or even as an adult. I've been thinking about it myself. I mean, it'll be a struggle, but hell, we've survived being Jehovah's Witnesses. So what's a little college?
Yeah.
Trying to find a strong support system outside of the religion would be really helpful, especially while you're still in it. So that way,
And
whenever you decide to leave, you have, support to fall back on. Also, I think this is very important because a lot of people just are so blind that I think trying to learn critical thinking skills would be really helpful. I know a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses that are homeschooled and stuff just don't even, it's just, it's like a foreign concept to them, like critical thinking skills. And not being scared to get on the internet and reading like from some true sources, like true scientific sources or like true experiences and stuff like that, and really trying to understand and grasp like the whole like world of it.
Right. Yeah. So, taking some time to actually go and research and read information that might not have occurred to you to look at before. So, okay. Yeah. Very, very good. Very good piece of advice. So, how do you think COVID has affected the Jehovah's Witnesses? Do you think that because there's less pioneering going on and because church members are having to have, congregational meetings over Zoom and things like that, that people will be stepping away from the church? Or do you think that that because it's a pandemic, which kind of hints at the possibility of the end times, that it's going to be driving the message of the Jehovah's Witnesses even more?
It's split. I think it's either driving them more or driving them away, like faster. Like I said, I'm pretty active on that Reddit, and there's a lot of people that are actually like really like starting to wake up. Their family's starting to wake up. I know like my brother's like been a little questioning about things. It's just, but then some people think, like I think the governing body is basically telling people to get ready for Armageddon. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. I don't know if that's because you got your doomsday or Jehovah's Witnesses that think it's literally happening in the next 5 minutes. And they always make my life stressful whenever I was like still in. So I don't know if they, I think it'll be more split, and I think they're going to lose people. I don't think they're going to gain a big following, like new people in. I think old people are going to leave.
Right.
And I know there's a scripture that they said before the Great Tribulation or something that isn't like the greater number will cool off or something. Isn't that right, Sid?
Yeah, like
I think about that. That's just going to drive the ones that believe in it. Sorry, go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, like the love of the greater number will cool off. But I think they use that. Maybe I'm remembering incorrectly. I thought that was used just in regards in general, like people won't be interested in like a relationship with God anymore. Like people just in general aren't religious.
Just
I could be wrong though. It's been a while.
It's been a while for me too, and everyone interprets it differently. Like my mom said one thing, an elder would say a different, and then like I go on a Bible study and I hear it different. I'm like, no one's.
But I do remember one of the big things that like witnesses are still looking for is like there's supposed to be a proclamation of like peace and security.
Every time there's something political going on, everyone's like, oh, peace and security, it's gonna happen. Like there was that thing with the UN just a month ago. I don't remember what it was. I didn't read about it because I was like, whatever, I have better things to worry about than their doctrine. But a lot of people were concerned about that they were going to do the cry of peace and security, especially during COVID. They're like, oh, it's like, adding up. And I'm like, okay.
So let's move on to the Q&A. Some
sorry.
people have given us some interesting questions. So I reached out on Reddit to a few different subreddits, and I'll start with Jim Truckhands. Sadie, if you want to answer this question, is there any joy in your religion? You always look miserable when I see you on the street.
That sounds accurate. I think I always looked miserable. I have a funny story about that real quick. My mom and my first stepdad got a divorce, and I caught up with him when I was an adult. Like, it was like 10 years later. And he was like, why do you look so miserable in all your Facebook pictures? And I'm like, gee, I wonder. Like, I'm still a Jehovah's Witness. Like, that's pretty funny.
So your response is, that's pretty accurate. I think I always did look miserable. My dad once said to me, why do you always look miserable? And I said, gee, maybe it's because I'm a Jehovah's Witness.
Pretty much. Like, you don't have to quote it word for word, because I didn't say that. I was actually at an assembly. It was my stepdad. But that actually really struck me. I'm like, wow. I'm like, because he had just came back too. So he probably was still fresh back into like the religion because he was gone for 10 years. Anyway, I thought that was a funny observation.
Sydney, this one's a bit more of a strange question. I don't know if you'll get it, because I think it's more geared towards English people, but maybe we'll see. So 3 questions. 1, what is your name? 2, what is your favorite color? And 3, how fast can an African quail fly when carrying a coconut?
My name is Sydney. What's my favorite color?
Yeah.
It's pink. I don't know anything about quails.
Okay, it's a Monty Python reference, I think.
I was about to say it's Monty Python, right? Because I think
maybe that's more of a Sadie question. I don't know.
I don't remember though. I was always too much living in Denver at the time when I watched it.
Okay, so Violent Sporgasm says, quote, where are all the bodies buried? Sadie, do you know?
Where are all the bodies buried? They usually cremate, or Jehovah's Witnesses usually cremate. I don't know. Where are all the bodies buried?
Answer. That's a good answer. Usually cremate. Awesome. Okay. Sydney. Emily says, do you think you were in a cult?
Duh.
Like Billie Eilish.
Absolutely, I was.
That's so funny. Okay. Sorry.
Absolutely, I was. Okay. Most likely has ADHD says, why are you no longer a JW, and what made you leave, Sadie?
What made me leave? Wait, sorry, I got distracted by the ADHD part.
Yeah, most likely has ADHD says, why are you no longer a JW, and what made you leave?
I'm no longer a JW because it's not God's organization. It's ran by 8-Ben in upstate New York, and it's misogynistic as hell, and I just got tired of it. I'd rather live my life the way I want to live it.
Misogynistic, nice. Yep, I would agree. So Sydney, clicked agenda says, who is Jehovah and what is he witnessing?
Oh my God, I've like literally gotten that question before. I mean, if you want like a legit answer?
Yeah.
I mean, JWs say that Jehovah is God's name, so Jehovah is God. And as for the witnessing, that's just the terminology, is like who we are as his servants. Like it has nothing to do on what he's witnessing. I mean, I guess you could say he's witnessing everything. He's God. He's supposed to be able to do that. But that's just the terminology that we use. We're witnesses for Jehovah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And one last question, which I'll leave for both of you to give your own answers, is a very interesting question from Quantum Lorenzo, who says, in a hypothetical scenario where science completely disproves all religion and is able to explain the creation of the universe with 100% certainty, what would happen to your faith?
I'll go first. I mean, if science can actually prove creation, I will start looking for a different religion. Honestly, I think I would be open to the idea if science could, totally prove it.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, it doesn't. So I mean, I don't know. But I'd be open to it. Just not Jehovah's Witnesses. I wouldn't go back to them for love and the money.
Right. Okay. And what about you, Sydney? Would you agree?
So just to clarify, the question again was if science proved everything.
If science completely disproves all religion.
If it disproves all religion and provided proof of how creation came about, what would happen to religion?
What would happen to your faith? Yeah.
I mean, if that happened, I would be ecstatic because I don't really have faith right now. So I would be super happy to learn as what it would happen to witnesses. I mean, they already like to pretend that they're very science friendly, science oriented. They would probably try to skew it some way. But yeah, I mean, as for me, I would just be happy to have some more scientific answers.
I'm sorry, can I re-answer that?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so can you repeat it?
In a hypothetical scenario where science completely disproves all religion and is able to explain the creation of the universe with 100% certainty, what would happen to your faith?
If it disproves religion, oh no, that's a confusing question, because if it disproves religion but can prove creation,
so the Big Bang Theory, evolution, all that type of stuff is 100% proved, and then that disproves all religion. So there's no higher power, there's no God, there's no deity up there in the clouds, there's no heaven and hell.
I don't need religion for anything. I'm a moral person, so I don't need religion for anything, and I think it would be kind of cool if they could prove some sort of thing like the Big Bang Theory or whatever else could be out there. You never know.
What do you think that would mean for the Jehovah's Witnesses if that ever happened?
I don't think their numbers would grow any larger, because a lot of their converts are already believe in God and creation and stuff. But I think of a lot of the ones that were really questioning, the emos, or the ones that are I don't know if this is the true religion, I'm just going to stick with it because I should, just in case. I think they would dip out. I think they would leave. I think that would put a dent in Jehovah's Witnesses, because I think there's a lot of people that actually, there's more people that are Jehovah's Witnesses that question that kind of stuff.
I mean, I've answered all my questions, so I was just going to hand it over to you two to ask if there was anything else you think we've missed. Sadie, would you like to go first?
I mean, we can talk about the blood doctrine all day because I really hate that thing.
Say that again, sorry.
Sorry, I talked fast. I was going to say, we could talk about the blood doctrine all day long because I really am not happy with that. The blood doctrine where they don't allow blood transfusion.
Yes, yep. So, yeah, do talk about that.
I personally lost my best friend to the blood doctrine. She got really sick with the flu, needed a blood transfusion. She wasn't allowed to speak for herself because she was in a coma. I know she would have taken it on the down low. That's what a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses do. But she wasn't allowed to speak for herself. And she passed. But I just really hate it because I try to get the family to get them to do it.
So you lost a good friend because the religion doesn't allow blood transfusions.
Yeah. And I have another friend that lost her mom from it recently.
How do you recover from something like that if you knew that there was a way that your friend could have been helped? That's not something I could imagine having to come to terms with.
I cry about it a lot. She died on Christmas Day too, so they waited a great time to pull the plug on her then. Oh God, because she was in the hospital for a while, and I mean there was no saving her without the blood transfusion. And I still don't totally understand that doctrine. It's never made sense to me. And like they also back in the 50s or something, they also used to say Jehovah's Witnesses weren't allowed to get organ transplants, which they can now. So it's like I don't understand where all scripturally where that comes from. It doesn't make sense to me. And to let someone die that is totally healthy other than needing a blood transfusion and she'll be fine. I don't understand why you wouldn't just do that. I mean, it also made me terrified of pregnancy. I never had kids because I was too afraid I would need a blood transfusion.
Of course, yeah.
And, a lot of gynecologists won't even do a delivery on a Jehovah's Witness because, they're like, if you need blood, I'm just going to give it to you and I'll just face the board later. So the whole thing is just a really touchy subject for me. I really hate it. I mean, and then some people, I knew someone that was in a car accident. Her husband was hysterical, said yes to the blood transfusion. And then they got away scotch-free. They didn't even get approved or anything.
Oh wow! And is this in the same congregation?
Yes, actually.
Oh my goodness, that's absolutely heartbreaking. How horrible must that be for the parents of that child to then have somebody else accept a blood transfusion and it's.
Well, my friend was an adult and she had a kid. She had a toddler. And but she was in that congregation. We grew up together in that congregation. And just several years before, it was only several years before, there was a blood transfusion that happened. It was a big ordeal. Nobody did anything. Nobody got in trouble. And then several years later, my friend needs one. And the medical board tried to the hospital, whatever it's called, tried to intervene, but I couldn't. So that's always a really touchy subject for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely understand why.
Allow the other. So I'm like, why do you do one and the other? I just don't understand.
I can completely understand why that would be a trigger for you, and also a point of passion as well, and something that you want to talk about. And I think the most important thing is that we're having a dialogue about it now, raising awareness about it now. I know my platform's only small, but it might encourage other people to start having the same conversations and asking the same questions, because you can't say that you are science friendly as a religion and then not accept medical help that can save the lives of your congregants.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. They think, like, Jehovah's Witnesses think they're so smart and savvy. They're like, oh, like they have all this like publications and like videos and stuff on healthcare and how they've pushed the healthcare system to go more bloodless, and it saves more lives than it does none. And I'm like, that's still stupid. Like, you can push for the bloodless doctrine if you want, but if somebody wants a blood transfusion, you shouldn't guilt the family into saying no to that. And then they have something called a hospital liaison committee, and they have elders basically stationed at your room so you don't make a bad decision like taking blood.
Yeah, so you don't like succumb to pressure, more or less.
And that can include, like, they say this part's a conscious matter, but like blood, like parts, like some people will refuse white blood cells even though it's not whole blood. So then they break it down by the parts of the blood, like plasma, white blood cells, etc. Like, they break it down like that.
Yeah, it's just another version of them interpreting the scripture to suit their own personal views of the whole thing.
Well, and it's very convoluted because they take everything from two scriptures, one in the Old Testament that the Israelites were told not to eat blood, like from an animal. And then in the New Testament, there's a scripture, I think it's the Apostle Paul talking, and he gives this list of things to abstain from, and he just says, keep abstaining from blood. But that's it. That's literally all it says. So, like, witnesses have taken that to the extreme, and like what Sadie was saying, back in the day, like, witnesses weren't allowed to do anything that had anything to do with blood. You couldn't have an organ transplant, you couldn't have anything to do with blood. And then in more recent years, you can get an organ transplant, or you can take like blood fractions, but they've only just added that in more recent years. Like, they've tweaked it, but it's like, if witnesses could have always had access to that care, there would be a lot more people who would have survived whatever their ailment was.
Right. Yep. It's
just very, very sad.
It sounds so tragic. I mean, from what Sadie's told us is one example of the type of bereavement and heartache and that this can cause these decisions to not allow people to have simple procedures like blood transfusions. And as medicine and science move forward, and as community groups, like we mentioned with equal rights, as they move forward and the church begins to look more and more and more archaic, there has to be a point where people will say, in order to retain the numbers that we have within our church, we have to move forward with the times, with the religion, with equal rights. So hopefully there'll be a stage where we'll get to see that, hopefully sooner rather than later. But Sydney, was there anything you wanted to add before we finish, or anything you think I've missed?
I'm trying to think. I think pretty much everything was covered. I'm trying to think, if I were to hear everything we talked about as like a witness, how I would like try to refute everything. But it really doesn't matter what I say, because there would always be someone who would try to say that I didn't know what I was talking about. I guess like the biggest thing that I would like to get non-witnesses to understand if they do listen to this podcast is I know that one commenter on Reddit said that they see us out and that we look miserable. But a lot of people don't have that perception. A lot of people think witnesses are like happy people, that they're good people. And there are a lot of really good witnesses. Some of the people that I love the most are still active witnesses, but the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is an incredibly harmful organization. It tears apart families with their shunning practice. It ruins lives with their two witness rule in regards to abuse. And if you're ever to encounter a witness at school, in the community, at your door, you should just ask them, do you have a son or a daughter, or clearly have a mom or a dad? How would you treat them if they got disfellowshipped, and how do you justify that?
Yeah, very well said. I mean, especially in terms of the two witness rule thing, going back to that again, I don't understand how somebody can justify that or rationalize that. It feels as though it's just another way for the organization to not take responsibility for the abuse that happens under its watch in a place where people should be protected and safe. So hopefully, again, by just talking about these things and having these conversations, we might be able to make a small bit of difference. But yeah, talking to Jehovah's Witnesses that you see on the street, also maybe just asking them if they're okay, or if they've read, because if Jehovah's Witnesses can come door to door and say, have you heard of our magazines, would you like a copy, then surely it's within our right to say, have you been on this XJW subreddit and read some of the testimonies and stories? So maybe we can challenge the perceptions and ideals of Jehovah's Witnesses that we see on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, not in a way to attack them, but just in a way to hopefully plant that seed of doubt that then can kickstart them on their journey to get into a place that yourself, Sadie and Sydney, that you are in now, which is a place outside of the Jehovah's Witnesses where you get to live by your own decisions, freely, get jobs or training or qualifications in any field you wish without feeling pressured to do something else, to be able to start your families and engage in any kind of sexual activity, hopefully as long as it's consensual, that you wish to join in with, and just generally have more freedom to live the lives and be the people that you're most comfortable being. So if you see a Jehovah's Witness on the street, maybe ask them if they've read BBC news articles, for example, and who knows what effect that could have. So, if you two are happy with everything we've spoken about, I am also happy to end the call there.
Okay.
If you think we've covered everything and there wasn't anything else you both wanted to add.
Not at the moment. I think I've added enough. I was also going to email you later. I saw that one email you sent me earlier, and I was going to respond to it. You sent it to me like yesterday.
This is the last interview that I'm doing with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. So you two will be the 11th and 12th people that I've spoken to.
That's a lot.
Around leaving the Jehovah's Witness movement, and I'm always astonished by the sheer no, it's okay, the sheer willpower and strength it has taken for everybody I've spoken to make that decision to finally move away from the church and not know what will happen in terms of excommunication from family and friends, but taking that opportunity to leave regardless of where they might stand with family members that decide to stay in the church. So I just wanted to commend you both and just thank you so much for your time and for trusting me with your stories and coming and speaking with me today. I feel extremely privileged and humbled that you would come and share such personal details of your lives with me. And thank you for contributing to the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciated the platform for it too. It really means a lot to me. It's the first time I've talked about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure to be able to just sit here and chat with people.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
It means a lot.
So I'm going to end the call there, and I just hope that both of you enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to receiving the response to the email, whatever decision you make around that, and just thank you both so much.
Thank you. All right, have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So there we have it, the conclusion to the Jehovah's Witnesses month. For those celebrating this year, maybe even for the first time, happy Halloween. Next month we will move on to new topics, covering things like the new Kadampa tradition and a drug rehabilitation compound named Straightway. I also have a special episode coming out next week on QAnon, just before the vote. And then in December we will be revisiting the troubled teen industry. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or find me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.